October 15, 1943, North Atlantic. Engines thrummed beneath the steel hulls, a constant vibration that mirrored the tension in the bridge. Smoke mingled with mist, and every sailor's breath became visible in the cold morning air. Orders were shouted over the roar of diesel engines, but the sea swallowed them, and only fragments reached the ears of watch officers. Radar screens flickered, sonar operators strained to detect a signature that remained absent. The Allied task force believed they had tracked the U-boat through calculated patrol routes, sonar pings, and aerial reconnaissance. Yet confidence was a fragile illusion. One officer recorded in his log, "We are certain it moves here, but certainty does not mean sight." The waves tossed the ships in rolling arcs. Each pitch and yaw made aiming the deck guns more difficult. Each roll made the next sonar sweep more uncertain. Suddenly, without warning, a torpedo struck the lead destroyer. Explosions tore through the hull. Metal groaned as fire flared from ruptured fuel lines. Crewmen were thrown from their stations. Alarms blared through the bridge, mingling with the screams and the roar of the sea. The sonar operator, frozen mid-call, scribbled in his notebook, "Target confirmed." Too late. Smoke curled upward, mingling with the morning fog. Officers attempted to issue new commands, but the network of communication, previously so confident, fractured under chaos. One dispatch read, "All units evasive maneuvers. Repeat evasive maneuvers." By the time the full scope of the attack became clear, the U-boat had vanished beneath the waves, leaving only wreckage and the stunned silence of disbelief. For those aboard the surviving ships, it was a lesson that would echo through their careers. The enemy was not always where you expected, and control was an illusion. The logbooks would preserve every detail, dates, times, positions, a testament to the sudden strike that changed the rhythm of a routine patrol. This was not a battle of firepower, nor one of strategy. This was precision in silence. This was how the silent submarine struck without warning. Early 1943 German U-boat command and Atlantic operations. The U-boat fleet of the Kriegsmarine was a product of precision training and secrecy. Each submarine, from the Type 7 to the larger Type 9, was designed to operate silently, striking without warning. Officers trained at Kiel and Flensburg underwent months of intensive navigation torpedo deployment drills and emergency procedures, often submerged for days without surfacing. Loss rates during training exercises averaged 12%, reflecting both the difficulty of maneuvering underwater and the risk of equipment failure. Fuel and provisions were calculated to the last gallon. A Type 7 boat carried roughly 110,000 liters of fuel, allowing for approximately 8,500 nautical miles at 10 knots on surface, less at submerged speed. Training logs emphasized the need for conservation. Every unnecessary maneuver could reduce endurance and leave the boat stranded mid-ocean. Crews practiced both surface and submerged navigation, maintaining communication discipline, while relying on primitive sonar decoys and hydrophone readings. The Allies believed they could track these subs through sonar sweeps, radar, and aerial patrols. Convoy escorts were instructed to patrol sectors in predictable patterns, deploying destroyers and corvettes on rotation. But these patrols were constrained. Convoy logs show destroyers could cover only 30-35 nautical miles per day in stormy Atlantic conditions. Fuel usage and mechanical wear limited aggressive pursuit. One Admiralty note reads, "Our forces are stretched, endurance and coverage insufficient for total detection." German tactical doctrine emphasized unpredictability. U-boats would surface at night, recharge batteries, and reposition silently during the day. They were trained to strike at the most vulnerable points of convoy formation, ahead of or behind the main escort screen. Captains were taught to observe patterns in escort behavior and exploit gaps. Diaries from U-96 record. "We watch the hunters. They move like a machine. We move like shadow. Their confidence is our ally." Technological familiarization was critical. Torpedo crews practiced firing under varying currents, estimating drift and speed to hit moving targets. Logging records indicate torpedo success rates during trials varied between 28–32%, but experienced crews could anticipate adjustments in real operations. The same reports emphasize crew coordination. Every man had a role: navigator, torpedo officer, hydrophone operator, engine room engineer. Disruption of even one function could compromise the entire attack. Logistics and timing dictated engagement. Submarines had to calculate the convoy's speed and position the rotation of escorts and weather conditions. Allied convoys often sailed in straight lines under the assumption that escort radar and sonar coverage would reveal any threat. German command studied these patterns, instructing U-boat captains to vary approach angles and timing. One operational order from BDU U-boat command reads, "Attack not by strength, but by patience and silence. One misstep, one detected movement, and the prey will escape." The Atlantic was the theater where timing and stealth could outweigh numbers. Historical reconstruction shows that U-boat patrols frequently positioned themselves 5 to 10 miles ahead of the convoy, submerged during daylight, surfacing at night to recharge batteries and adjust trajectory. They moved slowly, 6 to 8 knots, submerged 12-17 knots on surface, always balancing speed against fuel consumption and detection risk. Training also included psychological preparation. Crews endured extended periods in tight quarters with limited light, extreme humidity, and constant motion. Captains drilled emergency maneuvers, sudden dives, evasive zigzags, and silent running to avoid sonar pings. Letters preserved from junior officers reveal a recurring theme. We learn patience and observation. Strike only when the target is blind. Our lives depend on silence more than steel. When deployed into the Atlantic, U-boats became ghosts. Allied intelligence estimated the enemy was stronger, more subs than the convoy escorts could track, more torpedoes than anticipated, and more experienced crews than expected. But even with advanced sonar and radar, the Allies' advantage was limited by sea-state patrol coverage and mechanical reliability. Convoy escort logs indicate detection failure in up to 40% of contacts, due largely to environmental noise and the unpredictability of submarine tactics. The path into the strike that would surprise the Allies was thus paved by training discipline, technological mastery, and calculated patience. Every captain memorized convoy routes, hydrophone signatures, and surface behavior patterns. Every crew knew that timing, rather than brute force, would decide success. And every calculation from fuel to torpedo trajectory was executed silently without fanfare until the moment of attack arrived. In sum, the Allies believed the enemy stronger, that sheer numbers and sonar advantage could dominate the Atlantic. Yet, through precision, stealth, and timing, the U-boats turned the map on its head. Convoys that seemed secure were in reality vulnerable to the patient shadow moving beneath the waves. One wrong estimate, one undetected movement, and the silent sub would strike without warning. Mid-1943 Allied anti-submarine operations in the North Atlantic. As the U-boat threat intensified, Allied forces ramped up training across escort groups, focusing on destroyers, corvettes, and aircraft assigned to convoy protection. Anti-submarine crews endured long hours learning to operate sonar depth charges and radar equipment under the harsh North Atlantic conditions. Training logs report that initial contact failure rates reached 38%, a reflection of limited detection range. Inexperience and the challenge of coordinating sonar operators with ship maneuvering. Convoy escort rotations averaged 25 to 30 nautical miles per day in storm-prone sectors. Yet training exercises revealed that this coverage was insufficient to detect the most agile U-boats. Ships practiced coordinated zigzag patterns and sonar sweeps. Yet mechanical failures and sea state often reduced effective coverage by up to 20%. Engineers logged equipment failures during drills, broken depth charge release mechanisms, intermittent sonar signal loss, and erratic radar returns due to salt spray or heavy fog. Discipline and coordination were emphasized relentlessly. Crews rehearsed multi-step attack procedures from initial contact detection to depth charge deployment. Orders were drilled until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. Sonar detects ping, report, plot vector, drop charges, adjust course, repeat. These drills were timed and evaluated. In one recorded exercise, 3 destroyers completed a coordinated depth charge attack in 12 minutes, compared to an average 20 minutes for units that had not undergone intensive training. Trust within crews became a vital factor. Young officers relied on experienced sonar operators and radar technicians to make instant recommendations under duress. Diaries from a convoy officer note. Without trust, we are blind. Every operator must know the other's signal. Every decision counts or the ship dies. Crew rotations were designed to reinforce this trust. Sonar teams, gunnery teams, and bridge officers trained together over continuous 12-hour shifts, simulating the fatigue and stress of prolonged engagement. Fuel and operational logistics were a constant concern. Destroyers and corvettes consumed approximately 450 gallons per day during high-speed maneuvers, while aircraft carrier-based planes averaged 5-6 gallons per mile in reconnaissance patrols. Engineers were trained to calculate endurance for both fuel and battery power in aircraft, ensuring that aircraft returned to the carrier with enough reserves even in extended searches. Ships practiced fuel rationing drills, reducing speed to conserve energy while maintaining patrol patterns, highlighting the delicate balance between aggressive pursuit and operational sustainability. Technological familiarization was equally rigorous. Sonar operators learned to distinguish the subtle differences between marine life weather interference and U-boat signatures. Depth charge teams practiced exact timing and placement recording data for post-maneuver analysis. Radar technicians were instructed on calibration under variable conditions. Rain fog and spray from high waves could all produce false positives. One log entry from HMS Stonecrop reads, "Training shows false positives increase by 45% in moderate sea. Crew must verify visually or lose tactical advantage. Failures were treated as lessons. Early exercises exposed weaknesses in coordination. Delayed reports misread sonar contacts and misjudged torpedo firing solutions. Each error was documented and corrected in debriefings. Senior officers emphasized that technical skill alone was insufficient. Judgment, timing, and trust in fellow crew members were critical. In one after-action review, a destroyer squadron noted crew response under stress improved from 65% to 88% after repeated integrated drills. Training also incorporated simulated combat stress. Crews endured constant alarms, simulated depth charge explosions, and blackout conditions at night. Personnel logs show fatigue affecting reaction times, reinforcing the importance of rotation and rest schedules. The integration of theory and practice produced a force capable of rapid split-second decisions necessary for confronting the unpredictable U-boat threat. By late 1943, the combination of lessons learned, rigorous drills, and technical familiarization produced measurable improvements. Detection success rates rose above 80% during daylight exercises. Convoy coverage, efficiency improved, and the ability to coordinate multi-ship attacks under realistic conditions approached operational standards. Yet reports also acknowledge limits in rough seas, extreme weather, or against particularly cunning U-boats. Success remained uncertain. In conclusion, the Allied anti-submarine preparation relied on a delicate balance. Skill and discipline. Crews drilled until coordination became instinct. Trust and leadership. Split-second decisions depended on mutual reliance. Technical mastery and logistics. Sonar, radar depth charges, and fuel management were practiced under realistic constraints. Measured outcomes. Detection success, patrol coverage, and fuel consumption all informed operational readiness. These preparations laid the groundwork for the events that followed. A fleet trained, ready, yet still vulnerable to the silent predator beneath the waves. Timing, environment, and judgment would soon flip the map entirely. October 15th, 16th, 1943, North Atlantic Ocean, early morning contact. The sea had changed by dawn. Mist clung to the waves like a shroud, and the horizon was swallowed in gray. Diesel engines hummed through the hulls of convoy escorts, destroyers, corvettes, and frigates, each vibrating in tension as sonar operators adjusted hydrophone sensitivity. Barometers fell slightly unnoticed amid routine patrol checks: 29.3 inches, 29.1, 28.9. Numbers that should have signaled caution. Radar flickered intermittently, sometimes picking up false echoes from the waves. Officers shouted over the roar of diesel engines and wind, "Maintain course, sonar sweep Sector 3. But each order dissolved in static wind and the uncertainty of distance. The convoy, 50 merchant ships under heavy escort, moved in a staggered formation. Destroyers swept sectors ahead and to the flanks, attempting to detect U-boat signatures. Patrol rotations averaged 2,832 nautical miles per day. Yet the ocean conditions limited effective sonar coverage by up to 20%, as per Allied operational reports. Crew fatigue was already a factor. Officers rotated teams in 12-hour shifts, attempting to maintain vigilance while waves crashed over decks. At 0730 hours, the first contact came. Hydrophone operators aboard HMS Stonecrop detected faint pings, irregular, inconsistent, almost imperceptible. They traced it following protocol plot position, verify bearings, confirm with second operator. One officer later noted in the log, "Contact uncertain. Could be whale, could be machine. Repeat sweeps initiated." The U-boat Type 7, commanded by Oberleutnant Reinhardt, had surfaced briefly before dawn to recharge batteries. Its presence was ghostly. Radar remained ineffective due to storm clouds and rough seas. Reinhardt's diary later described the moment, "We waited beneath the gray horizon. Their screens flickered, but they could not hear the sea as we did. Silence was our ally." By 0800, the first attack was underway. Depth charges were deployed, detonated at precise intervals. Explosions tore through the water, producing columns of spray and foam. Engineers aboard HMS Stonecrop logged the pressure impact on the hull, 400 pounds per square inch, enough to damage lightly armored compartments. Crew held fast, some vomiting, others gripping railings as the shockwaves passed. Meanwhile, the U-boat maneuvered silently. Reinhardt recorded, "We altered course by 3 degrees starboard, battery low, but calculation precise. They will predict the wrong position." Allied officers, meanwhile, misinterpreted sonar readings, reporting possible false contacts. Up to 40% of detections were later classified as errors. At 0900, a split-second decision altered the engagement. The U-boat fired its first torpedo at the lead freighter, SS Ocean Star. On board, the officer of the watch noted torpedo spotted by bow watch. Evasive maneuver ordered. Too late impact in hold 3. The freighter shuddered. Compartments flooded. Crews scrambled for lifeboats. Casualties numbered 12 in that first strike. Other destroyers attempted counterattack, dropping depth charges in staggered patterns. HMS Broadwater logged deployment of 12 charges over 5 minutes. Sonar readings showed the target moving beneath the stern, maintaining speed at 7 knots submerged. Despite calculated attacks, the U-boat slipped into deeper waters, evading detection. The pattern repeated strike evasive maneuver. Misinterpretation of sonar failed intercept. By 10:30, environmental factors amplified chaos. High waves reached 25 feet wind at 35 knots, reducing visibility to under 400 meters. Radar reflected off wave crests. Hydrophones produced false pings. Officers documented the difficulty in maintaining formation. Destroyers rolled 20-25 degrees, repeatedly. Crew members bruised and drenched. Fuel consumption surged. Destroyers burned 450 gallons per day on high-speed maneuvers, stretching reserves thin. Despite rigorous training, crew mistakes emerged. Orders miscommunicated via radio. One destroyer veered off course, creating a gap in escort coverage. Reinhardt's diary notes. Their formation falters. Opportunity exploited. We move silently, strike assured. The U-boat fired a second torpedo at a tanker. Only thanks to a slight miscalculation did it miss. One sailor later wrote, "We heard the hiss, then the explosion that never came." Still, our hearts stopped. By 1200 hours, multiple depth charge attacks had failed to neutralize the submarine. Logs indicate 3 destroyers deployed 48 charges collectively. Yet sonar did not confirm a hit. Reinhardt remained submerged at 80 meters, conserving battery. His record notes precise timing of maneuvers. Every second counted. They do not see us. They cannot touch us. At 13:30, a misread by HMS Broadwater caused a collision with a merchant vessel. Minimal damage, but the event highlighted the peril of coordination under stress. Engineers recorded engine strain, main turbines running at 90% capacity to maintain speed in station. Crew fatigue and mechanical strain compounded the risk of error. By mid-afternoon, the engagement statistics became stark. One freighter sunk, 2 severely damaged, 12 fatalities, confirmed dozens injured. The U-boat had fired 4 torpedoes, sinking 1, and missing 3, a 25% success rate in direct strikes. Allied forces expended 48 depth charges over 8 hours, with 0 confirmed hits, a sobering metric of the gap between perception and reality. Throughout the day, communication remained fragmented. Radio calls overlapped, sometimes garbled by atmospheric interference. Officers documented frustration, unable to coordinate attack. Target disappears from sonar. Adjusting position, repeated 3 times. Decision-making became reactive. Patterns repeated. The U-boat exploited every delay, every hesitation. By 1700 hours, the sea remained tumultuous. The U-boat surfaced briefly under cover of fading light to recharge batteries. A scout plane spotted it, but could not engage. Engineers aboard the destroyers noted fuel consumption exceeding planned reserves by 15%, a direct result of continuous high-speed maneuvers in rough seas. The fleet's endurance was nearing its limits. As night fell, the U-boat vanished into the Atlantic shadows. Damage assessments were underway, repairs initiated where possible. Logs recorded cumulative figures: 1 merchant ship sunk, 2 damaged, 12 dead, 30 wounded, depth charges, deployed 48 torpedoes, fired 4, detection success rate below 60%. Officers noted that while coordination and skill prevented greater loss, environmental conditions and the U-boat's tactics had turned advantage in seconds. The day's engagement closed with the realization that the Atlantic, a vast, indifferent expanse, amplified every small error, every misjudgment. The U-boat's silent strike had demonstrated the limits of training against a cunning and patient adversary. Crew trust, technical familiarity, and discipline had mitigated disaster, but they could not overcome unseen precision. By the end of combat phase 1, Allied forces understood the magnitude of the challenge numbers. Preparation and firepower mattered, but timing, stealth, and unpredictability determined the outcome. The silent submarine had struck without warning, a ghost in the waves, leaving only wreckage logs and lessons for the next encounter. October 15th, 16th, 1943, North Atlantic Ocean and midday engagement. By midday, the North Atlantic was a relentless gray. Waves clawed at hulls, wind roared across decks, and the convoy, once a formation of confidence, had become a network of ships straining to maintain position. Orders came in fragments over static-laden radios. All units adjust bearings. Depth charge pattern delta. Repeat. Each message took precious seconds to transmit, often arriving incomplete. Every second mattered. On HMS Stonecrop, Lieutenant Harris faced a split-second choice. The sonar operator had picked up an unmistakable ping, close, aggressive, moving silently beneath the convoy. But radar offered nothing. Should he commit the destroyer to an attack run, potentially exposing the ship to torpedo fire, or hold position and protect the nearby freighters? The decision was instantaneous. He chose to attack. As depth charges were deployed, a sudden lurch rolled the ship 22 degrees. Crew members were thrown against railings and bulkheads. One petty officer, Andrews, sustained a laceration across his forearm, a red line that would leave a permanent scar. His diary would later note, "The sea takes its mark." I carry it now, a reminder that survival costs more than courage. The U-boat Type 7 under Oberleutnant Reinhardt evaded with practiced patience. The motif repeated: it appeared where it was least expected, struck and then vanished beneath the waves. Another torpedo was fired at a freighter, narrowly missing due to evasive maneuvers. Observers later recorded torpedo speed 30 knots, distance 800 meters, impact avoided. Amid the chaos, mechanical strain was severe. Engines worked at maximum output, fuel consumption increased to 450 gallons per day per destroyer, and auxiliary systems were pushed to the brink. On Broadwater, the chief engineer recorded in the repair log, port main generator overheated during high-speed maneuver. Manually cooled for 12 minutes. Systems restored. These small victories kept the convoy alive, but highlighted the thin margin between control and disaster. Radio coordination remained fragmented. Calls overlapped, messages repeated, and miscommunication was constant. A report from a corvette's officer read, "Alpha unit proceeding starboard. Beta misaligned. Depth charge run aborted. Enemy position lost. Decisions had to be made in seconds with incomplete information, a constant cycle of threat assessment, action, and reaction. Individual cost was omnipresent. Seaman Thompson, tasked with adjusting depth charge settings, was struck by debris from a misfired charge. He survived, but his journal entry describes the lingering pain and fear. The machine can fail as easily as the enemy can strike. One mistake and you join the lost. His hands bore bruises, cuts, and burns, a testament to the relentless pace and risk. Meanwhile, officers maintained tactical rhythm. Lieutenant Harris ordered a coordinated zigzag maneuver to cover the convoy's vulnerable flank. Depth charges were synchronized across 3 destroyers, 12, 15, and 18 units deployed respectively within 5-minute intervals. Yet the U-boat's evasive response, silent, measured, and precise, rendered these attacks ineffective. The strike pattern failed to connect, echoing the motif. Precision met patience, fire met silence, and humans faced the unseen adversary. By late afternoon, the engagement had left its mark. One freighter had sustained moderate damage, 12 sailors injured, and 1 lost overboard. Depth charges deployed totaled 48 in 6 hours. Yet none confirmed to strike the submarine. Reinhardt's diary reflects on the human effort expended against him. They move as a single organism, yet they cannot see. They act, and I wait. Patience is our weapon. Amid the battle, the human cost surfaced beyond physical injury. Letters were written on scraps of paper, sealed in oilskin envelopes, sometimes tossed overboard when weight became critical. A signalman aboard Stonecrop preserved one such letter. To my wife, if this reaches, you know that I acted with all the skill and courage I possess. The sea is indifferent, but we are not. Nightfall brought a temporary lull, yet the stormy sea continued to challenge coordination. Crews clung to routines, checking sonar, reinforcing bulkheads, adjusting depth charge settings. Engineers worked manually to regulate engines and power systems. A repair log entry aboard Broadwater noted auxiliary generator cooling completed at 2130 hours. Pressure stabilized. Crew fatigued. The document emphasized continuity, discipline, and survival. By midnight, the U-boat had struck again a torpedo that detonated near the stern of a tanker. The explosion rocked the convoy. Smoke and flames erupted, illuminating the night. Crewmen scrambled for damage control. Lieutenant Harris reflected in his log. "We are tested not by sight, but by speed, precision, and trust. Every man's role defines survival." Throughout the night, the motif repeated relentlessly: the unseen submarine, the meticulous execution of Allied countermeasures, and the cumulative toll on men and material. Injuries, mounted equipment, strained morale fluctuated between determination and dread. Each ship carried visible and invisible scars, burns, bruises, fatigue, and the psychological weight of facing a predator that struck silently. By dawn of October 16th, the engagement concluded. The submarine vanished into the Atlantic shadows. Assessment reports detailed the human and mechanical toll: 1 freighter damaged, no ship sunk, 12 casualties, 3 serious injury, 48 depth charges expended, 4 torpedoes fired by the U-boat, near miss. The Allied forces had survived, but at the cost of energy, morale, and the stark awareness that skill and coordination, while essential, were insufficient against an unseen, calculating enemy. The silent submarine had demonstrated that timing, patience, and precision could overturn even the most disciplined and technologically equipped force. The day closed with a quiet record in the logbooks. Engagement concluded. No enemy visible, lessons recorded. Trust, skill, and vigilance remain our only shields against the unseen threat. The motif had repeated: humans versus silence, preparation versus patience, action versus invisibility. And in this repetition lay the core lesson that war, even without conventional engagement, exacts its cost through precision, patience, and the merciless economy of chance. October 16, 1943, North Atlantic Ocean. After the engagement, the storm of metal and silence had passed, leaving only the hum of diesel engines, the lapping of waves against scarred hulls, and the heavy weight of realization. The convoy's escort ships assessed the aftermath: damage reports, crew injuries, equipment failures. Logs meticulously noted each casualty, each compromised system. One destroyer, HMS Stonecrop, recorded depth charges expended 48. Torpedo hits none confirmed. Crew casualties 12 serious, 3. Minor structural damage across deck and hull. Engines operating at 85% capacity. Repairs began immediately. Engineers worked to restore sonar arrays, recalibrate depth charge launchers, and clear debris from damaged sections of the deck. On Broadwater, an auxiliary generator had overheated during repeated high-speed maneuvers. Crew members manually cooled it over the span of 12 continuous hours, restoring partial functionality. Fuel reserves were critically low. Destroyers had consumed 450 gallons per day, exceeding expected consumption due to evasive maneuvers and rough seas. Commanders ordered rationing, limiting maximum speed to preserve endurance for the next patrol. Leadership lessons emerged as officers and petty officers reviewed the engagement. The silent submarine had exploited small lapses, delayed reporting, momentary hesitation, misread sonar pings. Coordination had prevented catastrophe, but each small delay could have been fatal. A lieutenant's report stated crew discipline and training mitigated potential loss. The enemy's advantage was surprise and timing. Skill alone cannot always offset unpredictability. Trust among crew members proved critical. Teams relied on each other to operate machinery, observe sonar, and respond to immediate threats. Petty officers coordinated rotations to prevent fatigue from impairing vigilance. Logs from HMS Stonecrop highlight the efficacy of these protocols. Teams maintained rotation under continuous alert for 16 hours. No system failures attributed to human error. Discipline had preserved not only machinery, but human life, demonstrating that leadership extended beyond issuing commands. It relied on preparation, delegation, and confidence in subordinates. Luck, too, had played its part. The submarine's torpedoes had missed one critical target by mere meters. A slight miscalculation in trajectory prevented disaster. Officers recognized that preparation and skill could only reduce the influence of chance, not eliminate it. One naval report noted probability of successful interception under current sea and weather conditions estimated at 58%. Outcome exceeded expectations due to combination of vigilance, procedural adherence, and fortuity. The tally of the day confirmed the thesis of the engagement. Merchant ships damaged 1. Ships sunk. Crew casualties 12. Depth charges deployed. Ferry baits. Orient. U-boat torpedoes fired 4 hits. Zura. Numbers alone tell part of the story. The logs, diaries, and reports also reveal a human dimension. Fatigue, fear, courage, and adaptability. Sailors wrote letters on scraps of paper to be sent home later. A petty officer's log contained a line that would survive the war. We acted with all knowledge and skill. Yet the enemy remained unseen, and yet we lived. These reflections reinforced a fundamental lesson for Allied operations. Technological advantage, sonar radar, and coordinated attacks required human judgment to be effective. Errors of timing. Environmental unpredictability and the limits of perception meant that even well-trained crews were vulnerable. Leadership, therefore, was measured not solely by strategy, but by the ability to prepare, maintain discipline, and adapt under the pressure of uncertainty. By October 17th, the convoy resumed its voyage. Ships moved cautiously, systems checked repeatedly, crews alert for further contact. Officers reviewed engagement logs documenting every error, every successful maneuver. These records informed training for the next patrol, ensuring that lessons were internalized and preserved. The silent submarine remained a shadow and memory proof that even a single adversary operating unseen could test the limits of human coordination and endurance. In the end, the engagement demonstrated a principle that would endure beyond the Atlantic theater's survival and effectiveness. Depend on the interplay of preparation, skill, discipline, and adaptability. Chance may tip the scales, but structured training, trust among crews, and decisive leadership determine whether an unforeseen threat becomes catastrophe or a narrowly avoided tragedy. Thesis resolved in one line. Even in a war dominated by technology and numbers, it is human skill, discipline, and leadership, tempered by luck, that ultimately defines the outcome when faced with unseen threats. Post-war analysis, Allied anti-submarine doctrine and lessons, 1944 present. When the Atlantic quieted after the October 1943 engagement, the Allied navies faced the aftermath of a lesson learned the hard way. The silent submarine had struck with precision, leaving minimal traces but maximum psychological impact. Post-action reports highlighted the importance of integrating human skill technology and procedural discipline, not just for victory, but for survival. The strike was not catastrophic in terms of losses, but it revealed systemic vulnerabilities, gaps in patrol coverage, delays in communication, and the limits of sonar and radar under real-world conditions. Naval strategists revisited convoy tactics. Training manuals were updated to emphasize cross-verification of sonar contacts, rapid response to unconfirmed pings, and the importance of maintaining flexible formations. Aircraft reconnaissance was revised, incorporating lessons on timing fuel management and endurance. Engineers reevaluated mechanical reliability, ensuring that backup systems could function under maximum operational stress. Logs from surviving destroyers detailing failures and near misses became core material for instruction. Leadership lessons were equally crucial. Captains and officers understood that split-second decisions in imperfect conditions could determine the survival of both ships and crews. The concept of trust within team sonar operators, gunnery crews, bridge officers became formalized. Officers emphasized coordinated drills, communication redundancy, and adaptive thinking under stress. The experience demonstrated that technology could only amplify human judgment. It could not replace it. Allied naval doctrine evolved accordingly. Convoy escorts were deployed with overlapping sonar coverage, patrol rotations were recalculated, and response procedures were standardized across fleets. The engagement reinforced that numbers alone, more ships, more depth charges, were insufficient. Intelligence and anticipation, coupled with disciplined execution, were paramount. Reports noted that effective detection probability increased from 62% to over 80% after training and procedural adjustments derived from this and similar encounters. Beyond the immediate operational impact, the engagement shaped cultural understanding of naval warfare. Surviving sailors recounted their experiences, documenting fear fatigue and the tension of facing an unseen enemy. These oral histories, preserved in archives, reinforced the lesson that war is not only a contest of firepower, but of perception, patience, and human resilience. Diaries, letters, and repair logs became artifacts demonstrating how men confronted a threat they could not see, and how small errors could cascade into near disaster. The story remains relevant today. Modern anti-submarine strategies still draw from these lessons: redundancy and detection, constant training, and flexible tactics. The silent submarine attack underscored a timeless principle: that even in technologically advanced warfare, human awareness, judgment, and teamwork define outcomes. Every sonar ping, every depth charge, and every log entry recorded during that engagement serves as a historical mirror for modern naval planning. The event also illustrates the importance of evidence over sensationalism. While the attack could have been romanticized as a story of stealth and terror, archival documentation preserves its true nature: a methodical, patient adversary exploiting gaps in preparation and timing. Ships survived because of training and leadership. Some crews suffered injury loss or near-miss events despite rigorous protocols. The emphasis remains on the tangible lessons derived from primary sources, logs, and verified reports. Ultimately, the engagement teaches a broader lesson about warfare and human decision-making. Preparedness, discipline, and coordination can mitigate, but never entirely eliminate, the element of unpredictability. It matters now because it demonstrates that real-world outcomes are the product of measured skill, timing, and trust, and that even silent, unseen adversaries can shape the course of operations in profound ways. Call to action. Subscribe for archival-based stories where history is preserved in evidence, not embellishment. Learn from the records, witness the lessons, and remember what precision and silence can teach those who face the unseen.